Hello everybody, welcome back. It's been a while, hasn't it? It's been a while. You know, the Christmas season's coming up. In about 4 days actually will be Christmas Day. All the holiday cheer, all the laughing and present opening. And yet, there's always time for a good scare. So, I thought, why not get into the Christmas spirit with a little Christmas horror story. We're going to be reading a story today called The Christmas Tree Decoration. So let's get into it. Christmas Tree Decorations is a spooky story about a girl who is home alone on Christmas Eve and has a nasty encounter with someone claiming to be Santa Claus. Jolly old Saint Nick. It was Christmas Eve, and an 11-year-old French girl named Juliette was decorating the Christmas tree. Her mother was working as a nurse in the local hospital, and the two of them had lived alone in a small apartment in the suburbs of Paris. Late that evening, Juliette's mother called and said she would not be home until late that night. Juliette continued to decorate the tree with all the lovely things her mother had bought from the shop. She draped some multicolored Christmas lights around the tree and hung beautiful ornaments on the branches. After placing an angel on top of the Christmas tree, she finally finished decorating and sat down to relax and watch TV. Even though she was all alone on the 6th-floor apartment, Juliette felt safe as she gazed out across the lights of the Parisian skylight. From her window, she could see the Eiffel Towers and the Champs de Mars. Most of the other tenants in the building had gone home to spend Christmas Eve with their relatives in the countryside. The apartment building was almost deserted. Juliette was growing bored waiting for her mother to return. Suddenly, she thought she heard a scratching noise at the front door. She turned down the TV and listened carefully. There was an eerie silence. Curious, she slowly approached the door and looked through the peephole. To her surprise, she saw a man standing outside, dressed in a red suit with fluffy white trim. He was large and fat with a dirty gray beard and wore a red hat on his head. He knocked at the door loudly. Nervous and concerned, she asked through the door, "Who's there?" "I'm Santa Claus," the man replied. "Let me in. I'm cold and tired and I'm hungry." At this, a chill went down Juliette's spine. She was no dummy. She knew whoever this creepy man was, he wasn't Santa Claus. "My mother isn't home right now," she said, her voice shaking. "Please leave." Peering through the peephole, Juliette watched as the man's eyes filled with anger and his face twisted into a grimace of hate. He began knocking at the door even harder and rattling the doorknob. "It's Santa Claus, Juliette," he growled. "Have you laid out some milk and cookies for me, Juliette? You know how much Santa loves his milk and cookies." The young girl had a sinking feeling in the pit of her stomach. How did he know her name? Then the man began kicking and pounding at the door. She peeked out again and saw him reach into his coat pocket and pull out a switchblade. He shoved the knife into the keyhole and tried to pry it open. Julia was terrified. She didn't know what to do. "If you don't go away, I'll call the police," she shouted. All of a sudden, the knocking stopped. Juliette stood perfectly still, afraid to move. Minutes passed, and she started to think that the man might have been scared away by her threat. She slowly approached the door and looked through the peephole to see if the man was really gone. The hallway seemed to be empty. Suddenly, she saw the man running down the hallway with an axe in his hands. Juliet screamed and ran to the closet in a panic. She crouched down and hid behind the coats as tears of fright rolled down her cheeks. She heard a boom, boom, boom as the man tried to smash down her front door. There was a mighty crack as the door gave way and the man came crashing through the splintered wood. Laughing to himself, he called out, "Juliet, my pretty, where are you, Juliet? Don't be afraid. We'll have ourselves some fun tonight. Where are you hiding?" The crazed intruder walked through the house, searching for the frightened girl. Juliet curled up in her closet, trembling with fear. She dreaded to think what he planned to do to her. Suddenly, the handle of the closet started to move up and down. Then the door began shaking, and she heard a man's voice laughing. "Juliet, I know you're in there," he said. "Open up for Santa. Open up before I open you up." The man swung his axe, and it struck the closet door with a huge bang, tearing into the flimsy wood. Juliet screamed and began to cry bitterly. She grabbed a wired coat hanger and twisted it to a point. She waited, her eyes wide and her hands trembling. There was another loud crash, and the closet door gave way to a hail of splinters. The horrible man tore the door off the hinges and thrust his head in between the coats. He was laughing and drooling like a madman as his huge, gnarled hands grabbed at the horrified girl. Juliet held up the pointed end of the coat hanger and bravely thrust it in the man's face. It went straight through his eyes. He recoiled in pain, screaming in a rage as blood flowed down his cheek. He ripped the wire out of his eye socket and grabbed Juliet by the hair. Then he dragged her, kicking and screaming, out of the closet. The man pushed her to the ground and held her tightly by the neck, leaning over her. Blood spilling out of his eyes, splatting all over her face. His mouth twisted into a grotesque smile, and as he whispered in her ear, "Tonight you will be privileged, my lovely Juliet. I've got a list, and I've checked it twice. I'm here to decide whether you've been naughty or nice. You can scream and beg for your life, but naughty girls get the axe, and nice girls get the knife." It was after midnight when Juliet's mother returned home. She saw the front door hacked to pieces and rushed inside to look for her daughter. Gazing around at the carnage, her eyes struggled to take it all in. Then she began screaming in absolute horror. The Christmas tree was decorated with Juliet's entrails, and her severed head was perched at the top. That's a scary story for you. I hope you all have a wonderfully Merry Christmas, and I hope 2019 will bring just as many scares as this year brung.